It's common when playing a minor chord progression, particularly a minor blues, to kind of get stuck in the minor pentatonic rut. And while there's nothing at all wrong with the minor pentatonic scale, you may be looking to add some new things to your playing. So today we're going to cover a little trick that I use to break out of the pentatonic box. Let's get into it. So we're going to be playing a minor blues today in the key of A minor, and the chords are going to be A minor, D minor, and E minor. But the part of the progression we're really going to focus on is this transition from the A minor chord to the D minor chord. And what we're going to do is we're going to substitute an A7 chord in that last bar before we go to D minor. So it's going to go A minor to A7, then to D minor. Now an A7 chord is an A major triad with a flat 7 on top. Here's what it sounds like in the rhythm track. Now you might think, why would we use an A major chord if we're playing a minor blues in the key of A minor? But what we're doing here is using what's called a secondary dominant chord to transition to this D minor. See, A7 is the dominant 5 chord of D minor, and we can use this chord to build tension and then resolve to D minor. If you're interested in learning more about dominant 5 chords, watch my lesson from last week where I go into detail on the theory behind dominant 5 chords. So let's look at some of the things we can use to accentuate this sound in our soloing and improvising. First of all, we can always just outline the chord by using the arpeggio. So let's look at this A7 arpeggio. We've got the notes A, C sharp, E, and G. And if we play this in this one position, we've got this shape. Now the trick with this is to play the notes of that arpeggio over the A7 chord and then resolve by landing on a chord tone of the D minor chord when we transition to that chord. And we can start on different notes of the arpeggio to get different sounds. So let's hear what a few of these sound like along to the backing track. So it's important to note that in this backing track, I've actually got the A7 chord there in the 4th bar of our 12-bar blues. So you can really hear the sound of that chord. But this kind of idea works equally well if the other musicians or the band you're playing with is just sticking on an A minor chord. The whole idea with this is to build some tension and dissonance that then resolves when you get to that D minor. So if it rubs a little bit against that A minor chord, that's perfectly okay. So once we get this together in one spot, we can start moving it around the neck. And we can even take the same line, like something like, and move that around to different positions and different octaves. So now I'm going to play over the track, and I'm going to use some of these ideas to transition between those two chords. And it's important to note that everything else I'm going to play, everything I'm going to play over the other part of the progression is going to be straight out of the minor pentatonic scale. Just straight up blues type phrasing right out of that minor pentatonic scale, except when we get to this transition point, I'm going to break out and use this A7 arpeggio and then resolve to chord tones of the D minor. So now we're going to take this A7 arpeggio idea and add another layer of tension on top of it. And to do this, we can use a diminished 7th chord as a substitute. If we look at an A7 chord, right, we've got the notes A, C sharp, E, and G. Now if we take away the root note, take away the A, we're left with C sharp, E, and G. These are the notes of a C sharp diminished triad, this kind of thing. Now we can make this a full diminished 7th chord by adding a B flat note on top, and we get this kind of sound, which if we play over A, has this very dissonant, tense sound, but it resolves really nicely to D minor. So now we can use the notes of this diminished 7th chord to create lines. And it's very similar to our A7 arpeggio. All we're doing is instead of playing the A, we're substituting that with a B flat. So we can play a lot of the same lines we played before, like this is the A7 arpeggio line we used before. If we take out that A and substitute it with a B flat, we get this C sharp diminished arpeggio line. And it gives us this really beautiful, dissonant, tense sound that resolves beautifully to D minor. So let's hear what this sounds like against the backing track. Now, once we get comfortable with playing this in one spot and adjusting our ear to this new sound, we can start moving this around the fretboard and play it in different positions and different octaves. All right, so let's hear some of these against the backing track. I'll play through the whole form twice so you can hear this transition 2 times. And once again, I'm going to just stick to strictly minor pentatonic, very simple minor pentatonic blues phrases over the rest of the progression. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about is another way we can build even more tension over this chord. That's kind of the overarching theme here, is we're creating some tension and dissonance in this spot where we're transitioning between chords. Because it gives us a lot of opportunity to stretch out and play some really colorful things. And again, we're breaking out of the typical rut of kind of thinking one scale over the whole chord progression. A lot of this for me comes down to the underlying chords, right? I'm always thinking about the underlying chords, and that kind of, influences the types of things I'm going to play in my lines. So for this next set of chords, we're going to look at some altered voicings, right? We can take this A7 chord going to D minor, and we can add lots of different colorful extensions on top of the chord to create some dissonance. For instance, we could play a flat 5 on top of this A7. And what I'm playing is a basic shell voicing, which is just the root, the flat 7, and the major third of the A7 chord, and then I'm putting a flat 5 on top. I can also put a sharp 5 on top. I can put a flat 9, which is kind of like that diminished sound. I can also put a sharp 9, right? Or I can put combinations of them. I like to put the sharp 5 and the sharp 9, and then drop that down to a flat 9, and then resolve to D minor. You get some really pretty chord options this way. For instance, if I'm playing a blues in A minor, right, I'm playing along my minor pentatonic licks, and then I want to transition to that D minor, I can play these nice altered voicings and then land right on D minor. And once again, once I understand the harmony, understand what's going on in the chords, I can break out of that and use that as a jumping off point to create lines. Now for these types of chords, the scale we need to know is the A altered scale, right? This scale right here. Right, the notes are the root A, the flat 9 B flat, the sharp 9 C, the major third C sharp, the flat 5 E flat, the sharp 5 F, the flat 7 G, and then the root. So in the scale we've got the basic flat 7, root, third, major third, and flat 7, right? This kind of shell voicing of a dominant chord. But then we've got the flat 5, the sharp 5, the flat 9, and the sharp 9, all within the scale. Right? We can just look at it in this one position. But once again, we can use this in this spot to build different tensions and create some interest as we transition between these chords. So here's what it sounds like, a simple example. I'll just kind of play through a section of the scale over this spot in our chord progression. Okay, so this type of thing can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. You can honestly play very simple lines like, right, something as simple as that where I'm just playing the sharp 9, the flat 9, root, flat 7, and then going down to the minor third of my D minor chord. It could be as simple as that. You know, I could be playing A minor pentatonic, right? And then very simple little melodic altered line to get to that D minor chord. Or I can play much more complicated things, right? Really flesh out the scale. It's really up to you to decide what sound you're going for and, you know, how comfortable you are playing these ideas. So now I'll play over the track again, and once again, keeping our theme, I'm going to stick to strictly minor pentatonic over the bulk of the chord progression, except for this one transition spot. I'll use some altered ideas, and I'll kind of spread it around the fretboard a little bit. Alright guys, so as always, all the tabs and notation for these examples in this lesson will be available over on my Patreon site. The link is down in the description, and that's a great way to support this channel if you haven't checked it out already. As always, I want to thank you for watching, and thanks for all the kind comments and the continued support. Happy practicing, and take care.